The crash landing. The void of space shimmered with the faint glow of distant stars as the Earth scout ship Horizon pushed through the darkness. Captain Sarah Chen sat at the helm, her eyes fixed on the swirling, purple planet growing larger in the viewscreen. Officially, this was a routine scouting mission to catalog potentially habitable worlds. Unofficially, it was humanity's first venture beyond their solar system, a desperate attempt to find new resources and perhaps even allies in a galaxy that grew more hostile by the day. Entering the atmosphere in 30 seconds, announced the ship's AI, its robotic voice echoing through the cramped cockpit. Sarah nodded, her hands tightening on the controls. She'd trained for this moment for years, but nothing could truly prepare her for being the first human to set foot on an alien world. The ship shuddered as it hit the upper atmosphere, flames licking at the reinforced hull. Sarah's eyes darted between readouts, making micro-adjustments to their descent. Everything seemed nominal until a shrill alarm cut through the air. Warning. Unknown energy signature detected, shields failing. Sarah's heart raced as she fought to maintain control. The ship bucked and rolled, systems flickering on and off. Through the chaos, she caught glimpses of a lush alien landscape rushing up to meet them. With a sickening crunch, the horizon slammed into the ground, and darkness engulfed her. When Sarah regained consciousness, the acrid smell of burning electronics filled her lungs. She blinked, trying to focus through the haze of pain and confusion. The cockpit was a mess of twisted metal and shattered displays. Miraculously, her suit had auto-sealed, protecting her from the alien atmosphere. With trembling hands, Sarah unstrapped herself and began the arduous process of escaping the wreckage. Each movement sent waves of pain through her body, but the training kicked in. Assess, adapt, survive. As she emerged from the twisted remains of the horizon, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The alien world spread out before her in a riot of color and bizarre shapes. Trees with iridescent leaves swayed in a breeze she couldn't feel through her suit. The ground beneath her feet was a mosaic of purples and blues, almost resembling a coral reef. Sarah's wonder was cut short by the realization of her dire situation. The ship was beyond repair, its remnants scattered across a wide area. Her emergency beacon was active, but who knew how long it would take for a rescue ship to reach her, if they even could in this unexplored region of space. As the adrenaline began to fade, exhaustion and pain threatened to overwhelm her. Sarah stumbled away from the crash site, knowing she needed to find shelter and assess her supplies. The alien sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape. She had only managed a few hundred meters when a sound stopped her in her tracks. It was faint, almost like a whisper on the wind, but distinctly not natural. Sarah's hand instinctively went to her sidearm as she scanned the area. There, partially hidden behind a cluster of bioluminescent plants, she saw movement. Sarah held her breath as a figure emerged, unmistakably alien, yet with a form not entirely dissimilar to her own. It stood on two legs, with arms that ended in delicate, multi-fingered hands. Its skin was a pale blue, almost translucent, with patterns that seemed to shift and swirl beneath the surface. But it was the alien's eyes that captured Sarah's attention, large, iridescent orbs that reflected the fading sunlight like living opals. And in those eyes, she saw something achingly familiar: fear, curiosity, and a glimmer of hope. For a long moment, human and alien regarded each other in silence. Then, slowly, the alien raised one hand in what Sarah could only interpret as a gesture of peace. She lowered her weapon, her racing heart beginning to calm. The alien took a tentative step forward, and Sarah noticed a smaller figure peeking out from behind it. A child, she realized, clinging to what must be its parent. The adult alien made a series of soft, melodic sounds, clearly communication, though incomprehensible to Sarah. Swallowing hard, Sarah raised her own hand in a mirror of the alien's gesture. "I come in peace," she said, knowing the words were meaningless to the beings before her, but hoping the tone would convey her intent. The alien tilted its head, listening. Then, to Sarah's amazement, it repeated the gesture she had made, accompanied by a sound that was a surprisingly close approximation of peace. A wave of dizziness washed over Sarah. Whether from her injuries or the sheer magnitude of this moment, she couldn't tell. She swayed on her feet, and the alien moved with surprising speed to steady her. Its touch was cool through her suit, and she felt a faint tingling sensation where their bodies made contact. The alien made another series of sounds, this time directed at the child. The little one hesitated, then scampered off into the strange forest. The adult turned back to Sarah, gently guiding her in the direction the child had gone. Sarah knew she should be cautious, that following an unknown alien could be dangerous. But her options were limited, and something in her gut told her to trust this being. With each step, the pain in her body intensified, and she found herself leaning more heavily on the alien for support. They walked for what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes. The alien landscape blurred around Sarah as she focused on putting one foot in front of the other. Finally, they emerged into a small clearing where a structure stood, a dwelling of some kind, its organic shape blending almost seamlessly with the surrounding vegetation. The child alien was there, along with several others of the species. They regarded Sarah with a mixture of fear and fascination. The one supporting her made a series of rapid sounds, and the others quickly cleared a path. Inside the dwelling, Sarah's eyes struggled to adjust to the dim, blue-tinted light. The alien guided her to what appeared to be a bed, a soft, moss-like surface that seemed to conform to her body as she lay down. The coolness seeped through her suit, soothing her aching muscles. As consciousness began to slip away, Sarah's last thought was of the sheer improbability of her situation. She had come seeking new worlds, new resources for a struggling humanity. Instead, she found herself at the mercy of an alien race, the first human to make true contact with an intelligent species beyond Earth. In her final moments before succumbing to exhaustion, Sarah felt a gentle touch on her forehead. She opened her eyes to see the alien looking down at her, its opalescent eyes filled with what she could only describe as compassion. And in that moment, despite the vast differences between them, Sarah felt a profound connection, a shared understanding that transcended language and biology. As sleep claimed her, Sarah's last conscious thought was a mixture of fear and hope. She was lost, injured, and alone on an alien world, but she was alive and she had made contact. Whatever came next would change the course of human history forever. The true journey, she realized, was only just beginning. Uneasy alliance. Sarah Chen awoke to a world bathed in soft, blue light. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind as she struggled to remember where she was. Then, like a tidal wave, the memories came crashing back. The crash, the alien landscape, the strange beings that had taken her in. She sat up slowly, wincing at the dull ache that permeated her body. To her surprise, her suit had been removed, replaced by a gossamer-thin material that seemed to shift and shimmer with her movements. Sarah's hand went instinctively to her side, where she remembered a particularly nasty gash from the crash. Instead of the expected pain, she felt only smooth skin. A soft trill drew her attention to the entrance of the room. The alien that had first encountered her stood there, its opalescent eyes regarding her with what Sarah could only interpret as concern. In the better light, Sarah could see more details of the being's appearance. Its blue skin was covered in intricate, swirling patterns that seemed to pulse with an inner light. The alien's face was elongated, with no visible nose, and a mouth that appeared more like a series of small, vibrating tendrils. The alien made a series of melodic sounds, gesturing with its multi-fingered hands. Sarah shook her head, trying to convey her lack of understanding. The alien tilted its head, then slowly approached, carrying what looked like a small, pulsating orb. Sarah tensed as the alien came closer, but forced herself to remain still. The being held out the orb, making a gesture that seemed to indicate Sarah should take it. With hesitation, she reached out and grasped the strange object. The moment her fingers touched the orb, a tingling sensation spread up her arm and into her mind. Suddenly, she could hear a voice, not with her ears, but somehow directly in her thoughts. "Can you understand me now?" The voice was neither male nor female, but carried a sense of warmth and curiosity. Sarah gasped, nearly dropping the orb. Yes, she thought back, unsure if this strange telepathy worked both ways. "I can understand you. How is this possible?" The alien's eyes seemed to shimmer with excitement. "It is a technology we use to communicate with other species. We call it the Harmony Orb. I am Zara, and I welcome you to our world, Lumina." Sarah's mind reeled with questions, but she forced herself to focus. "Thank you for helping me, Zara. I'm Sarah Chen, from Earth. Can you tell me what happened after I lost consciousness?" Zara moved closer, sitting on the edge of the moss-like bed. "You were gravely injured. Our healers worked to mend your body, but we feared you might not survive. Your physiology is different from ours." Sarah looked down at her healed side in amazement. "Your medical technology is incredible. On Earth, these injuries would have taken weeks to heal." A flicker of sadness passed through Zara's eyes. "We've had much practice healing wounds. Our world, it has not always been peaceful." Before Sarah could inquire further, the door opened again, and the child she had seen earlier peeked in. Zara made a gentle trilling sound, and the little one scampered over, regarding Sarah with unbridled curiosity. "This is my daughter, Lyra," Zara explained through the orb. "She has never seen a being like you before." Sarah smiled at the child, waving gently. Lyra's eyes widened, and she mimicked the gesture, a small hand moving in an exaggerated wave. "Hello, Lyra," Sarah said softly, even though she knew the child couldn't understand her words. Zara's expression turned serious. "Sarah, I must ask, why have you come to our world? Are there more of your kind coming?" The question brought Sarah crashing back to the reality of her situation. "No," she replied, a lump forming in her throat. "I'm alone. My mission was to scout for habitable worlds, to find resources and potential allies for Earth. We're struggling. Our planet is dying, and we've been searching for a new home." Zara was silent for a long moment, her eyes swirling with emotion. "I understand the desperation that drives such a journey," she said finally. "Our own world faced a similar crisis not long ago. A great war nearly destroyed us, and many of our people were lost." Sarah's heart sank as she realized the implications. "I'm so sorry, Zara. I didn't know. My people, we don't want to take your world from you. We're looking for uninhabited planets, or to establish trade relationships." Zara's hand reached out, gently touching Sarah's arm. The contact sent a tingling sensation through her skin. "Do not apologize, Sarah. Your honesty is appreciated. Perhaps there is a way we can help each other." Before Sarah could respond, an alarm sounded from outside. Zara jumped up, her eyes wide with fear. "They've found us," she whispered. "Who?" Sarah asked, her body tensing for danger. "The shadows," Zara replied, her voice trembling. "They are the remnants of those who sought to destroy our world. They hunt us, seeking to finish what they started in the war." Sarah's mind raced. She was still weak, on an alien world she knew nothing about, facing an unknown enemy. But as she looked at Zara and Lyra, she felt a surge of determination. These beings had saved her life, and she owed them a debt. "What can I do to help?" Sarah asked, pushing herself to her feet. Zara looked at her in surprise. "You are still healing. You do not need to involve yourself in our conflict." Sarah shook her head. "Where I come from, we have a saying, 'The enemy of my enemy is my friend.' You've shown me kindness. Let me return the favor." For a moment, Zara seemed to search Sarah's face. Then she nodded. "Very well. Come, we must move quickly." As they rushed from the dwelling, Sarah's mind whirled with the sudden turn of events. She had come seeking a new world for humanity, but found herself embroiled in an alien conflict. Yet, as she followed Zara and the other Luminans to what she hoped was safety, Sarah felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced in years. The alien landscape blurred around them as they ran, the bioluminescent flora pulsing with agitated light. In the distance, Sarah could hear the ominous sound of engines, far more advanced than anything she had encountered on Earth. They reached a hidden cavern, its entrance obscured by a waterfall of glowing liquid. As the Luminans ushered their children inside, Zara turned to Sarah, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "The shadows hunt us for our technology, the very advancements that allowed us to heal you," Zara explained hurriedly. "They believe that by controlling it, they can reshape our world in their image." Sarah's mind raced, drawing on her military training and the desperate resourcefulness that had driven humanity to the stars. "Your healing technology," she said, an idea forming. "Can it be weaponized?" Zara recoiled slightly. "We are a peaceful people. We use our gifts to heal, not to harm." "I understand," Zara said softly. "But sometimes to preserve peace, we must be prepared to defend it. I'm not suggesting we kill anyone, but if we could incapacitate the shadows, buy ourselves some time." Zara was silent for a long moment, her eyes swirling with conflicting emotions. Finally, she nodded. "There may be a way, but it will be dangerous and we will need your help." As the sound of the shadow ships grew closer, Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline. She was alone on an alien world, injured and vastly outgunned, but she was also humanity's representative, carrying with her the ingenuity and determination that had allowed her species to survive against impossible odds. "Tell me what you need me to do," Sarah said, her voice steady with resolve. Zara's eyes seemed to glow with a newfound hope. "Come," she said, leading Sarah deeper into the cavern. "We have much work to do and little time." As they disappeared into the depths of the alien stronghold, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the strange turn of fate. She had come seeking a new home for humanity, but instead found herself fighting to protect the home of another species. It was not the mission she had trained for, but perhaps it was the one she was meant to undertake. The uneasy alliance between human and Luminan was about to be tested in fire, and as the shadow ships loomed ever closer, Sarah knew that the fate of not just one world, but potentially two, hung in the balance. The looming threat. Deep within the luminescent caverns of Lumina, Sarah Chen found herself in a world that defied her wildest imagination. The walls pulsed with bio-organic light, casting ever-shifting shadows as she followed Zara through winding tunnels. Around them, Luminans worked with quiet urgency, their movements fluid and purposeful. "Our ancestors built these caverns millennia ago," Zara explained through the Harmony Orb, which Sarah now wore as a small pendant around her neck. "They serve as both sanctuary and laboratory." They entered a vast chamber where dozens of Luminans huddled around what appeared to be holographic displays, but the technology was like nothing Sarah had ever seen. The images seemed to float in midair, constructed of light and mist. A tall, wizened Luminan approached them, his skin a deeper blue than Zara's, etched with intricate patterns that seemed to tell a story of age and wisdom. "Zara," he said, his voice resonating through the Harmony Orb, "you bring the outsider to our inner sanctum." Zara straightened, her eyes shimmering with determination. "Elder Kale, this is Sarah Chen of Earth. She has offered to help us against the shadows." Kale's gaze fell upon Sarah, his opalescent eyes seeming to peer into her very soul. "And what could a being from a distant world offer us in our time of need?" Sarah swallowed hard, feeling the weight of not just Kale's gaze, but that of every Luminan in the chamber. "I may not understand your technology," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "but where I come from, we've learned to make do with less. Sometimes, a fresh perspective is all you need to turn the tide." Kale was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well, Zara, show her what we face." Zara led Sarah to one of the holographic displays. With a wave of her hand, the misty images coalesced into a three-dimensional map of the surrounding area. Sarah could see the caverns they occupied, and beyond them, a vast network of canyons and forests. But what drew her attention were the pulsing red dots moving steadily closer. The shadows, Zara explained, her voice tight. Their ships are unlike anything we've built. They do not just destroy, they corrupt. Any of our technology they touch becomes twisted, turned against us. Sarah studied the display, her military training kicking in. How many of your people can fight? A ripple of unease passed through the gathered luminans. Kel stepped forward, his expression grave. We are not warriors, Sarah Chen. Our strength lies in creation, in healing. The few who stood against the shadows in the past, they are no longer with us. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Sarah's mind raced, trying to find a solution that didn't involve turning these peaceful beings into soldiers. Her eyes fell upon the healing pod she had awoken in earlier, and an idea began to form. Your healing technology, she said slowly, it manipulates energy, doesn't it? To accelerate cellular regeneration. Zara nodded, her eyes bright with curiosity. Yes, it channels the natural energy of our world to restore balance within living beings. Sarah turned to the display, pointing at the approaching shadow ships. Could that same technology be used to disrupt the energy systems of those ships? Not to destroy them, but to incapacitate them. A murmur ran through the gathered luminans. Kale stroked his chin thoughtfully. It is possible, but we would need to greatly amplify the output, and to do so without harming the shadows themselves. We'll find a way, Sarah said firmly. On Earth, we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. We'll adapt, improvise, and overcome. For the first time, a smile crossed Kel's face. You speak with the wisdom of the ancients, Sarah Chen. Very well, let us see what your human ingenuity can bring to our Luminan technology. The next hours were a blur of activity. Sarah worked alongside the Luminan scientists, her limited understanding of their technology offset by her ability to think outside their established paradigms. They began modifying healing pods, turning them into projectors that could target the shadow ships with concentrated bursts of restorative energy. As they worked, Sarah learned more about the conflict that had brought Lumina to this point. The shadows were not invaders from another world, but Luminans themselves, a splinter faction that believed the only path to survival was to become one with their technology, to shed their physical forms and exist as beings of pure energy. They think they're saving our species, Zara explained, her hands moving deftly over a control panel. But in doing so, they would destroy everything that makes us who we are. Sarah nodded, understanding all too well. Humanity had faced similar crossroads in its history, the allure of transcending physical limitations, often blinding people to the cost of losing their humanity. As the sun began to set, casting the world outside in an ethereal twilight, their work was interrupted by a piercing alarm. Kel rushed to the main display, his eyes wide with fear. They're here, he announced, his voice resonating through the chamber. The shadows have begun their assault. Sarah moved to the display, studying the approaching forces. The shadow ships moved with an unsettling fluidity, more like living creatures than machines. They were targeting the outer defenses of the Luminum settlement, their weapons leaving trails of corrupted, twisted matter in their wake. We're not ready, Zara said, her voice trembling. The projectors need more time to charge. Sarah's mind raced, searching for a solution. Her eyes fell upon her own crashed ship, still visible on the outskirts of the map. My ship, she said suddenly. The power core is still intact. If we can integrate it with your technology, it might provide the boost we need. Kale looked at her in surprise. You would give us your only means of contacting your people. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Earth is millions of light years away. But you, your people, you're here now, and you need help. A moment of understanding passed between them. Kale nodded solemnly. Very well. Zara, take a team and retrieve the power core. Sarah, you will coordinate our defenses from here. As Zara and a group of Luminans rushed to carry out the plan, Sarah turned back to the display. The shadows were getting closer, their corrupting influence spreading across the land like a virus. For a moment, the enormity of the situation threatened to overwhelm her. She was one human, alone on an alien world, facing an enemy she barely understood. But as she looked around at the Luminans working frantically to save their home, Sarah felt a surge of determination. She might be far from Earth, but in this moment, she represented the best of humanity, its resilience, its ingenuity, and its capacity for compassion, even in the face of the unknown. "All right," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Let's show these shadows what happens when they threaten a world under humanity's protection." As the Luminans rallied around her, Sarah couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. The looming threat was upon them, but they would face it together, human and Luminan, united in their determination to preserve a future worth fighting for. The battle for Lumina was about to begin, and with it, a new chapter in the story of both their species. Humanity's ingenuity. The caverns of Lumina thrummed with nervous energy as Sarah Chen stood before the holographic display, her eyes darting between the approaching shadow forces and the team led by Zara racing towards her crashed ship. Time was running out, and the fate of this alien world hung in the balance. "Elder Kale," Sarah called out, her voice steady despite the chaos around her, "we need to buy Zara more time. Is there any way we can slow the shadow's advance?" The ancient Luminan's eyes swirled with concern as he considered her words. "Our defenses are passive, designed to shield rather than repel. We never imagined we'd face an enemy that could corrupt our very technology." Sarah's mind raced, drawing on every scrap of knowledge she'd gleaned about Luminan technology. What about the bioluminescent plants outside? Could we use them to our advantage? Kel's expression shifted from confusion to intrigue. "The flora, they are sensitive to energy fluctuations, but I fail to see how." "On Earth," Sarah interrupted, excitement building in her voice, "we have plants that respond to sound vibrations. If your plants react to energy, maybe we can use them to create a natural early warning system, or even a temporary barrier." A young Luminan scientist named Vex stepped forward, his eyes bright with inspiration. "It could work. If we amplify the energy signature of the shadow ships, we could trigger a mass reaction in the local flora." "Do it," Kale commanded, newfound hope in his voice. Sarah and Vex worked feverishly, repurposing sensors and amplifiers. Outside, the bioluminescent forest began to pulse with increasing intensity, creating a dazzling light show that disoriented the incoming shadow ships. It wasn't much, but it bought them precious minutes. Just as the makeshift defense began to falter, Zara's voice crackled through the communications system. "We have the power core, but the shadows are closing in. We need a distraction to make it back." Sarah's heart raced. They were so close, but one wrong move could doom them all. Her eyes fell on her discarded spacesuit, and an idea struck her. Dangerous, possibly insane, but just crazy enough to work. "Vex," she called out, "how quickly can you rig up a remote control for one of your smaller vessels?" The young Luminan blinked in surprise. "Minutes, perhaps, but why?" "No time to explain. Just do it, and make sure it can interface with my suit's systems." As Vex worked, Sarah outlined her plan to Kale. The elder Luminan's eyes widened with each word. "It's too risky," he protested, "if you're captured." "Sometimes you have to take risks to protect what matters," Sarah replied, her voice firm. "My people have a saying, 'Who dares, wins.' It's time to show the shadows what humanity is capable of." Minutes later, Sarah stood at the entrance to the cavern, her heart pounding in her chest. She was dressed in her spacesuit, modified with Luminan tech to interface with a small, sleek vessel hovering beside her. "Remember," Vex said, his voice tinged with worry, "the ship will mirror your movements. But be careful, the neural link is untested. Too much strain cold." "I'll be fine," Sarah assured him, though her own doubts gnawed at her. "Just be ready with those projectors the moment Zara gets back." With a deep breath, Sarah activated the neural link. The world around her seemed to stretch and warp as her consciousness expanded to encompass the ship. She could feel every system, every thruster, as if they were extensions of her own body. Without hesitation, Sarah launched herself into the air, the ship moving in perfect synchronization. She soared over the bioluminescent forest, marveling for a split second at the alien beauty below her. Then she spotted her targets, the shadow ships pursuing Zara's team. "Hey," Sarah shouted through the ship's communications system, her voice booming across the alien landscape. "You want advanced tech? Come and get it." The shadow ships turned, their sensors locking onto the unfamiliar human technology now streaking across their scanners. Just as Sarah had hoped, the corrupting tendrils reached out, trying to assimilate her vessel. But Sarah was ready. With reflexes honed by years of flight training, she danced through the air, leading the shadow ships on a wild chase. Every near miss, every hairpin turn sent jolts of pain through her body as the neural links strained to keep up. Through gritted teeth, Sarah pushed herself to the limit, drawing the shadows further and further from Zara's team. She could feel the ship's systems beginning to falter as the corrupting influence of the shadows clawed at its edges. Just when it seemed she could take no more, Zara's voice cut through the pain. "We're in." The power core was connected. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. "Now, Vex, hit them with everything we've got." From the caverns erupted a blinding surge of energy, not destructive, but restorative. The modified healing rays washed over the shadow ships, overloading their systems with life-giving energy. One by one, the ships faltered, their corrupting influence fading as they dropped from the sky. With the last of her strength, Sarah guided her ship back towards the cavern. As she touched down, her legs gave out, the strain of the neural link finally overwhelming her. But even as darkness crept into the edges of her vision, she saw the faces of the Luminans gathered around her, awe, gratitude, and something else. Respect. Zara knelt beside her, cradling Sarah's head. "You did it," she whispered, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "You saved us all." Sarah managed a weak smile. Not bad for a primitive human, huh? As consciousness slipped away, Sarah's last thought was of Earth, so distant and yet somehow closer than ever. She had come to this alien world seeking hope for her own people, but in risking everything for the Luminans, she had discovered something far greater: the power of two species united against impossible odds. The battle was won, but Sarah knew this was only the beginning. As the Luminans rushed to tend to her injuries, the seeds of a new alliance were already taking root. Humanity's ingenuity had turned the tide, but it was the combination of human daring and Luminan wisdom that had truly saved the day. In the soft glow of the alien cavern, a new chapter in the history of both species was about to unfold. The battle for survival. Sarah Chen awoke to the soft hum of Luminan healing technology, her body aching but her mind clear. As her eyes adjusted to the bioluminescent glow of the cavern, she found Zara and Elder Kale watching over her, their opalescent eyes filled with a mixture of concern and admiration. "Welcome back," Zara said softly, her voice resonating through the harmony orb. "You've been unconscious for 2 planetary rotations." Sarah sat up slowly, wincing at the lingering pain. "The shadows, did we stop them?" Kel's expression turned grave. "We've won a battle, Sarah Chen, but I fear the war is far from over. Your bravery bought us time, but the shadows are regrouping. They will return, and in greater numbers." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the cavern. Vex burst into the room, his young face etched with worry. "Elder Kale, our long-range sensors have detected a massive shadow fleet approaching. They'll be here within hours." Sarah's mind raced, pushing through the fog of recovery. "How many?" "At least 100 ships," Vex replied, his voice trembling. "Far more than we faced before. Our modified healing rays won't be enough to stop them all." A heavy silence fell over the room. The Luminans exchanged glances of quiet desperation, the weight of their impending doom palpable in the air. But as Sarah looked at these beings who had saved her life, who had shown her the best of what intelligent life could be, a fire ignited within her. "No," she said firmly, pushing herself to her feet. "We're not giving up. Not now, not ever." Zara reached out to steady her. "Sarah, you're still weak. And even at full strength, what can we do against such overwhelming odds?" Sarah's eyes blazed with determination. "On Earth, we have a saying. The night is darkest just before the dawn. We've faced extinction-level threats before, and we've always found a way. Together, we can do this." Her words seemed to awaken something in the Luminans. Kel straightened, his ancient eyes shimmering with renewed purpose. "What do you propose, Sarah Chen of Earth?" Sarah moved to the holographic display, her mind working furiously. The Shadow's strength is their technology, their ability to corrupt and assimilate. But that's also their weakness. They're so focused on advancement that they've forgotten the power of the natural world. She pointed to the vast network of bioluminescent flora surrounding the Luminan settlement. These plants, they're not just beautiful, they're a massive, interconnected network of energy. What if we could use them as a planet-wide defense system? Vex's eyes widened with understanding. A global eco-shield. But the energy required to activate something on that scale would be enormous. "My ship's power core," Sarah said, her voice tight with urgency. "You said it was still intact, right? If we combine that with your healing technology and the natural energy of Lumina itself..." Zara gasped. "We could create a purifying wave that would wash over the entire planet." "Exactly," Sarah nodded. "It won't destroy the Shadows, but it could cleanse their corrupted technology, forcing them to confront who they really are beneath all that twisted metal." Kale stroked his chin thoughtfully. "It's ambitious, perhaps even impossible, but given the alternative, he turned to the gathered Luminans. "Prepare yourselves. We have work to do." The next few hours were a blur of feverish activity. Sarah worked alongside the Luminan scientists, her human perspective helping them approach problems from angles they'd never considered. They repurposed healing pods, rerouted power conduits, and prepared to channel the very lifeblood of Lumina itself. As the Shadow Fleet drew ever closer, Sarah found herself atop a massive crystal spire, the focal point of that improvised planetary defense system. Zara stood beside her, both of them connected to a web of glowing tendrils that stretched out across the landscape. "Are you sure about this?" Zara asked, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. "The energy surge, it could kill you." Sarah managed a grim smile. "Better to die standing than live on our knees. Besides, I've got humanity's stubbornness on my side." Before Zara could respond, the sky darkened with the arrival of the Shadow Fleet. Their ships blotted out the stars, a vast armada of corrupted technology descending upon Lumina like a metallic plague. "Now," Sarah shouted into her comm unit, "Vex, activate the core." Deep within the caverns, Vex threw the final switch. Sarah's ship's power core pulsed with blinding intensity, its energy flowing through the modified healing rays and into the crystal spire. Sarah gasped as raw power surged through her body. Every nerve ending screamed in agony, but she held on, focusing all her will on channeling the energy outward. Beside her, Zara trembled with the strain, their hands clasped together in a bond that transcended species. The bioluminescent flora of Lumina erupted in a dazzling display of light and color. A wave of pure, restorative energy expanded outward from the spire, washing over the landscape and rising into the sky. As the waves struck the Shadow Fleet, their ships writhed and convulsed. Layers of corrupted technology peeled away, revealing the lost Luminans within. Ship after ship fell from the sky, not destroyed, but transformed. Sarah felt her consciousness expanding, touching the minds of every being on the planet. She saw flashes of memory, the pain and fear that had driven the Shadows to their destructive path, the hope and determination of the Luminans who had resisted them. And through it all, she felt the planet itself, alive and aware, embracing all its children. With a final, blinding surge of energy, The wave engulfed the entire planet. Sarah's world exploded into light, and then darkness. When Sarah opened her eyes, she found herself lying on the soft ground, surrounded by a forest that pulsed with gentle, soothing light. Zara knelt beside her, tears of joy streaming down her face. "You did it," Zara whispered. "You saved us all." As Sarah sat up, she saw luminance emerging from the forest, not just Zara's people, but the former shadows as well. Their corrupted technology was gone, leaving them bare but whole, blinking in wonder at the world they had nearly destroyed. Elder Kale approached, supporting a frail figure that Sarah recognized as the leader of the shadows. "It seems," Kale said, his voice filled with emotion, "that in trying to save us from death, our lost brothers nearly doomed us all. But through your courage, Sarah Chen, and the combined wisdom of our peoples, we have been given a second chance." The shadow leader looked at Sarah with eyes that shimmered with regret and gratitude. "We forgot what it meant to truly live," he said softly. "In our quest for perfection, we nearly lost our soul. Can you ever forgive us?" Sarah stood, her legs shaky but her spirit strong. "Forgiveness is the first step towards healing," she said. "On Earth, we've learned that the hardest battles are often the ones we fight within ourselves. But when we stand together, there's no challenge we can't overcome." As the first light of a new day broke over the horizon, luminance from both factions embraced, tears of reconciliation flowing freely. Sarah watched in awe, realizing that in coming to this distant world, she had not only found hope for Earth's future, but had helped forge a path of redemption for an entire civilization. The battle for survival was won, but the true victory was in the bonds forged between species, in the power of compassion to overcome fear, and in the enduring strength of life itself to find a way forward, even in the darkest of times. As Zara took her hand, Sarah knew that the greatest adventure, for herself, for Lumina, and for the future of both their peoples, was only just beginning. A new future. In the days that followed the great battle, Lumina underwent a transformation unlike anything in its long history. The once divided people, Luminans and former shadows alike, worked together to rebuild their world. The scars of conflict slowly faded, replaced by a shared vision of a united future. Sarah Chen found herself at the heart of this renaissance, a bridge between two worlds. As she stood on a hilltop overlooking the sprawling capital city, now a harmonious blend of nature and technology, she marveled at how far they had come in such a short time. Zara approached, her skin shimmering with patterns that told of hope and new beginnings. "Contemplating your handiwork?" she asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. Sarah chuckled, shaking her head. "Hardly. This is your people's achievement. I just gave a little push." "A little push that changed the course of our entire civilization," Zara countered. "The Council of Elders has been in session for days, discussing our future. They've asked her to see you." Anxiety fluttered in Sarah's stomach as they made their way to the newly constructed council chambers. The building was a marvel of luminant architecture, its organic curves seamlessly blending with the natural landscape. Inside, Sarah found herself facing not just Kale and the traditional elders, but also representatives from the former Shadow faction. Kale stood as they entered, his eyes shimmering with an emotion Sarah couldn't quite place. "Sarah Chen of Earth," he began, his voice resonating through the chamber, "you came to our world as a stranger, yet you have given us more than we could have ever imagined. You've shown us the power of unity, the strength found in diversity, and the courage to face our deepest fears." The shadow leader, now known as Vaughn, stepped forward. "In our misguided quest for perfection, we nearly destroyed everything. But through your actions, we've rediscovered what it truly means to be Luminan. We owe you a debt that can never be repaid." Sarah felt a lump forming in her throat. "You owe me nothing," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I did what anyone would do when faced with the extinction of a beautiful, worthy civilization. My people, humans, were not perfect. We've made countless mistakes. But we've learned that our greatest strength lies in our ability to come together in times of crisis, to see beyond our differences and find common ground. Kale nodded solemnly. It is precisely that wisdom we hope to learn from. Sarah Chen, we have a proposal for you, one that could change the fate of both our worlds. Sarah's heart raced as Kale outlined their plan. The Luminans had been monitoring Earth's transmissions, learning of humanity's struggles with overpopulation, dwindling resources, and climate change. They proposed a cultural exchange, Luminan technology and ecological knowledge in return for human ingenuity and adaptability. We have vast uninhabited continents that could support human colonization, Vaughn explained. And with our combined knowledge, we could help Earth heal its wounds. But we would need an ambassador, someone who understands both worlds. The implication hung in the air. Sarah's mind whirled with the possibilities. You want me to be that ambassador, she said, realization dawning. Zara stepped forward, taking Sarah's hand. You've already proven yourself as a bridge between our peoples. Who better to guide us into this new era of cooperation? For a moment, Sarah was overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were proposing. She thought of Earth, of the family and friends she had left behind. But as she looked around at the faces of the Luminans, beings who had become as dear to her as any human, she knew what her answer would be. I accept, Sarah said, her voice steady with resolve. But on one condition, this can't be a one-way exchange. If we're to build a true alliance between our worlds, we need to establish a permanent presence here on Lumina, a human colony, working alongside your people, learning from each other. The council members exchanged glances, then nodded in agreement. It shall be done, Kale declared. We will prepare for the arrival of your people, and you shall be our voice to Earth. In the months that followed, Sarah worked tirelessly to establish communication with Earth. Using a combination of Luminan technology and her own jury-rigged systems, she finally made contact. The response from Earth was a mixture of disbelief, joy, and cautious optimism. As the first human colony ships appeared in luminous skies, Sarah stood with Zara and the council to welcome them. Tears streamed down her face as she saw the awe and wonder in the eyes of her fellow humans as they took their first steps on this alien world. Among the new arrivals was Dr. Emily Rodriguez, Earth's foremost expert in xenobiology. As Sarah embraced her old friend, Emily whispered, "When you left on that scouting mission, we never imagined. This is beyond our wildest dreams." Sarah smiled, gesturing to the Luminans and humans working side by side to establish the new colony. "This is just the beginning, Emily. We have so much to learn from each other." In the years that followed, the alliance between Earth and Lumina flourished. Human cities rose alongside Luminan settlements, each learning from the other. Luminan healing technology revolutionized human medicine, while human adaptability helped the Luminans explore new frontiers of science and art. Sarah found herself at the center of it all, a tireless advocate for cooperation and understanding between the two species. She watched with pride as the first generation of human Luminan children grew up, their unique perspective promising to bridge the gap between the two cultures in ways she could only imagine. One evening, as the twin moons of Lumina rose over the horizon, Sarah stood on the balcony of her home, a structure that blended human and Luminan architecture. Zara joined her, their hands intertwining naturally. "Do you ever regret it?" Zara asked softly. "Staying here, becoming the bridge between our worlds." Sarah shook her head, smiling. "Never. I came looking for a new home for humanity, but I found so much more. We've created something beautiful here, something that could change the course of both our species." As they looked out over the thriving, intermingled community below, Sarah felt a profound sense of hope. The challenges ahead were many, but facing them together, there was nothing humans and Luminans couldn't achieve. The future stretched out before them, a tapestry of infinite possibilities woven from the threads of two worlds, and at its heart stood the enduring truth that had brought them together, that in the vast, often hostile expanse of the universe, the greatest strength comes not from technology or power, but from the bonds forged between kindred spirits, no matter how different they may seem. Sarah Chen had come to Lumina as an explorer, become its savior, and now stood as a symbol of a new era of interstellar cooperation. As the stars twinkled overhead, she knew that the greatest adventure, for herself, for humanity, and for their Luminan allies, was only just beginning. The story of Lumina and Earth, of humanity's first steps into a larger galaxy, would be told for generations to come. And at its core would be the simple, powerful message that had changed everything, that even across the vast gulfs of space, hope, courage, and compassion could build bridges strong enough to unite worlds.